Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Sam Martin Burr and a very warm welcome back to my YouTube channel and podcast. In today's video, I'd like to do an Arabic language companion to a lecture which I listened to recently, which was published by a really good friend of mine called Rayhan on his YouTube channel Talk with Ray. So please go and listen to that lecture. It's a lecture by Dr Nasser Rashid. And I love it for many reasons. First and foremost, because he has a Scottish accent. So let's get into it. So there's two things that he says in particular that are in Arabic. One is an ayah from the Qur'an, from Surah Al-Tahrim, and the second is a really well-known Arabic proverb. So I'd like to do two videos separately. In the first one, I'm going to talk through the Arabic language of the ayah from Surah Al-Tahrim, because the whole lecture is really around this ayah, and then the proverb that he gives later is just kind of something else to illustrate a point. And obviously it's not really the place in that lecture for him to do the Arabic language breakdown of the ayah, so I will do that in this video. So let's get into it. So what is this ayah? The whole kind of lecture is around protecting your family from the hellfire. So of course there's this ayah in Surah Al-Tahrim where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, Allah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. I have a translation here actually. Let's read a professional translation before I go through kind of the word for word of it. So, O believers, protect yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is people and stones, overseen by formidable and severe angels, who never disobey whatever Allah orders, always doing as commanded. There's some really useful Arabic language stuff in here, which is why I thought it would be, first and foremost, I wanted to do this video to kind of bring some more value to the Sheikh and to Brother Rayhan as well. But there's just some really useful Arabic in here too. This first bit at the beginning I don't think requires much explanation. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, a very commonly repeated phrase which we hear in the Qur'an to address the believers. O those of you who have believed. Something which people often mistranslate this as like, it's not a mistranslation, but sometimes it's a misunderstanding of the language if it's not deliberate. Where people say, "Oh, believers," right? This translation says, "Oh, believers." I'm not saying it wrongly. It's a wrong conveyance of the meaning, but like amanu isn't mu'minun, right? It's not the mu'minun are the believers, but alladhina amanu are those who have believed. Amanu is from the verb amana, to believe. Oh, those who have believed. Then there's this really interesting little imperative here. Qu. What on earth is that verb from? Qu anfusakum. Qu yourselves. But what is this qu? So qu is from the verb waqa. So you know this verb is interesting because it's beginning week, right? Begins with a waw, and it's also final week. So it's so it's weak on both sides, right? It's final week because it ends in a vowel, and it's beginning week because it begins in a vowel as well. And when we go through the process of building prepositions, we end up cutting off those vowels. So what do we end up with? This verb meaning to protect. There's a term wiqaya, meaning protection, which comes from this verb. But the verb waqa, means to protect from. So protect yourselves from something. But this preposition is really unique because, you know, when we end up cutting off that waw at the beginning and the alif maqsura at the end, to get our imperative, the actual verb is just qi. The imperative is just qi in the masculine. In the masculine singular, it's just qi, right? And to have a verb in Arabic which is only one letter is very rare. There's only one other verb in all of Arabic I can think of, which is the verb ra'a. The imperative of ra'a is just ra. Right, but that's the only other example. I actually thought that was unique until I thought about this particular verb. So, anyway, let's continue. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum. O those who have believed, protect yourselves. Wa ahlikum, and your families. Wa ahlikum, and your families. From what? Naran. So in Arabic you don't need to say qu minan nar. You don't need to say protect from the fire. Protect from is all wrapped up in the verb waqa. Present tense, by the way, is yaqi. And then as I say, imperative is qi. So we don't need to say qu anfusakum wa ahlikum min narin. We don't need to say that, right? You don't need to say min and nar. You can just say naran. So protect from yourselves and your families from the fire. Okay, waquduha, waqud. So the waqud is the is the fuel, the waqud. وقودها. Ha really means her. It's feminine. It's a feminine pronoun. This is an evidence for why we know that the word nar is a feminine word. As it's a little bit like saying her fuel. A fire, her fuel, is an-nas wal-hijara. Is mankind, wal-hijara, and stones. Dr Nasser Rashid in the talk, he gives some details about the difference between a fire which is fueled by humans and stones versus the fire of this dunya, which is fueled by wood and or whatever else. Good. And what else do we know about this? What else do we know about this fire? We know alayha, upon it. Upon it is what? Malaikatun, are angels. Malaika, is the plural. It means angels, and this is also. But when we see the adjectives after this, when we describe the angels, that they are ghiladun and shidadun. Ghilad and shidad are the plurals of ghalidh and shadid. Shadid is quite easily translated as severe. Ghalidh is perhaps translated as stern. I think stern is fine. Like ghalidh and shadid, their meaning is quite similar. But we get an idea of very, very formidable angels. Like these are angels you don't want to mess with. Okay, so what's significant about us using the plurals though? Ghiladh and shidad. Well, this is why it's important when we talk about, like in the Arabic in 60 Steps program, we often talk about how non-human plurals are feminine singular, right, grammatically. But, that English explanation of it isn't entirely complete because angels aren't humans, they're non-humans, but they're also not grammatically feminine singular, which is why when we can, it's best to use the Arabic terminology for that, to say غير عاقل, to say that they are unknowing rather non-human, because obviously in the Islamic perspective, there are things which are non-human, but they are aqil, right? Like angels, for example, and the jinn and things like that. So, so even though the angels are non-human, they are still aqil, they are still conscious, right? So they have the capacity to be aware of Allah. So we don't use feminine singular. We don't say malaikatun, ghalidatun, shadidatun. We don't use the singular feminine for it. We use the plural just like we would humans. Good. Malaikatun ghiladun shidadun. What else do we learn about them? La ya'sun Allah. They are not asa. The verb asa means to disobey. If someone is asin, it means they are disobedient. La ya'sun. They do not disobey. There's another final week verb actually. We saw a final week verb with the verb waqa, and then this one with asa. I think it is actually the same root where the word for a stick comes from. In the Qur'an where we see examples of Musa alayhi salam having his asa, it's the word asa as well, but the stick ends in a tall alif rather than alif maqsura. The verb ends in an alif maqsura. The word for a stick or a staff ends in a tall alif. But perhaps there is a connection between them because you use your staff. When we hear Musa alayhi salam talking about what he uses it for, وَأَهُشُّ بِهَا عَلَىٰ غَنَمِي, that I use it to kind of to guide my sheep, right? The staff, it discourages from disobedience, right? When the sheep are sort of being herded, we use an asa to stop the sheep from doing asa. So perhaps there is a connection, but Allah knows best about that. But anyway, the angels, لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهِ, they do not disobey Allah. Good. What was I going to say? So it's a final week verb, as we see. And also that was the thing. So we also see a verb being used in the plural, right? We don't see the verb being used in the feminine singular. We wouldn't anyway, because it's coming after the word for angels, but just kind of reinforces the fact that angels are not treated as feminine singular because they are aqil, they are conscious. Good. What else about them? They obey ma amarahum. They obey Allah in terms of what amarahum, what He commands them. The verb amara, to command. Hence we have an imperative. A commanding verb is a fi'l amr. An example of which, is the word qu, which we saw earlier. It's an imperative. Good. Ma amarahum. They do not disobey Allah, what He commands them. And what? وَيَفْعَلُونَ, and they do مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They do what they have been commanded, or what they are commanded to do. So there at the end, actually, we have an example of an active plural verb, يفعلون, and then we have a passive of a plural verb, يؤمرون, because يؤمرون is actually the passive of amara. Just like we would have amara in the past tense, umira, but then in the present tense we have yu'marun. Just like, if I'm to kind of insert another verb, same conjugation with a different verb, we might have yuktabun, they were written, or something, or yushrabun, they were drank, or yuqtalun, they were killed. Good. Okay, so that is a little breakdown of this entire ayah that was mentioned. It's the 6th ayah of Surah Al-Tahrim, and it's kind of the whole the whole point of this sort of 20-minute or so lecture, which is on Talk with Ray's YouTube channel, is all kind of around this particular ayah. So I just wanted to bring out some lessons from it and make sure you guys have a perspective on the Arabic language and some of the grammar and vocab gems that are wrapped up in it. So the next video, I will do another talk about a proverb which the Sheikh mentions in that talk. Yes, which is about learning and the importance of learning whilst you're a child, the significance and the benefit of learning whilst you're young. So that'll be the next video anyway. So come back to the YouTube channel for that soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.